It's just, okay, you got that going. All right, so I'm gonna share my screen and
while
we've
she's
got
doing
some,
that, I'll just say
yeah.
quickly that, I mean, we're going to share some slides and tell you more about the project and go into the application. But if you have questions at any time, please feel free to stop us, put something in the chat. Pam and I are good at interrupting each other and watching the chat and saying, hey, there's a great question here. Or feel free to unmute yourself and ask. We'll have time specifically at the end for Q&A, but don't be shy if anything pops up while we go along too.
Yeah, so welcome to our information session. This is the first of two. So if you know of somebody who really wanted to get this information, there's still one coming up on November 5, 9 a.m. Pacific time. And the name of this project is the new Face of Library Makerspaces. We'll get into why it's called that. But that's the name of the IMLS grant that we've been awarded. The award began on September 1, and it's a 2-year project, but we really think it's the beginning of something that will last. It's designed to be something that lasts much longer and is sustainable beyond the 2 years of the grant. And it's our website that we actually started with a previous project that we'll tell you about is the makersinthelibrary.org. So that's where we'll be putting a lot of the information about this project on that site. Lisa, do you want to get into the goals of our project?
Sure. So this is the goals of the IMLS grant. We're hoping to form a diverse collective of libraries, and we'll talk a little bit more about what we mean by a collective, and that's why this application is out, because we need you to help us to get this collective off the ground. But the idea is that we'll have library professionals who really support one another, share resources, and together build new knowledge, all in service of community-centric maker programs. And we'll tell you more about what we mean by that when we talk about our previous project. We also want to identify tools, resources, and strategies from all of the amazing library makerspaces out there across the country, and how they've adapted to the COVID-19 pandemic. And Pam alluded to, this is the new face, right? And that's why we called it, because a lot of things have changed, right? When just in the past 2 years, and we want to learn from libraries about what's worked, what strategies you've shifted to during the pandemic, and which of those might actually become part of your regular services moving forward. And then we're going to update our toolkit to reflect those changes. And then we also just want to share best practices, professional development opportunities, so that others can start to also the process of developing a community-centered makerspace, but have the support of all of you amazing people around the country, so that we can start to reach new diverse audiences together. And so this project is funded by the Institute of Museum and Library Services. So thank you, IMLS. I'm Lisa Regala. I have a consulting company called Regalium Consulting, and my colleague Pam does as well, P. Van Helsema Consulting. So we are the folks that will be kind of day-to-day running the project. Khalifa is a library organization based in California. They're our fiscal sponsor for the project. So any of the funding would be going through Khalifa. And our other two partners, Rockman and Al, is our evaluation firm, and they will be working on the evaluation for this. And Nation of Makers, we're really excited to say, is a partner on this project, and that's part of our sustainability plan. So we're working with Nation of Makers a lot and hoping to house a lot of things on their site and build things with them so that this can really live on with Nation of Makers. And here is a little snapshot of our amazing advisory board. We have 6 great folks that we're actually meeting with later today, later this morning, who have been helping us think through the application and this collective. They all come from a background of libraries. Kelly is from the Association of Small and Rural Libraries. Christina really focuses on diversity and equity issues in libraries. We have Rafi, who comes from a background in thinking about collectives. He was part of running the Hive. Vera is part of the Connected Learning Network. Jerry, oh, there we go. That's Maggie's book, right?
This is Maggie's book, Remaking the Library Makerspace. Is came out just last year, and it has a lot of articles. Yep.
So we're excited to have Maggie on board, and Jerry, who runs something called the Community Science Workshop Network, which is another network of kind of hands-on maker-inspired programming. So really excited to have these folks behind us and helping us along the way.
And so I'll tell you a little bit about the project that informed and led us to the place we are now. Back in the beginning of 2018, Lisa at the Bay Area Discovery Museum had launched a new initiative in partnership with the California State Library to try to help under-resourced libraries, many of them in rural areas, not all, but ones that didn't have very much staffing or didn't have a big budget for programming. How could they actually launch maker programs? And at the time they were thinking for early childhood. So I came on and began working with Lisa on this project, and it was 2.5 years, almost 3 years of a project where it was a really community-centered way of going to these communities, talking to the people that live there, figuring out what institutional assets, what community assets were there, what interests, what capacities, all those. We ended up over time developing maker programs in partnership with these libraries that every single one of them is different because it was really rooted in the community. And that was one way we really thought it had the best chance of surviving, since the resources were very low in these areas. And it was all over the state of California. And out of that, these librarians were helping us develop a toolkit for how people can do this in their own library. Whether it's these were public libraries, but it certainly could happen in a school library as well, or even an academic library. And it's not as much focused on the programming itself, but on all those things that you need to build the infrastructure. You need to have a plan. You need to know how the operations are going to work. I mean, we all, in a practical sense, how am I going to get this off the ground and how am I going to get it running? How am I going to train people? All those different things are part of this toolkit, which is now freely available for download, and it has a lot of great resources. But we wanted to build on that. You know, we did that project and we ended it during the pandemic of all things. And we're like, oh, great. Now everybody's library is closed and we can't even go and tell people about this project very easily. But we're like, well, what if we built on it? And there's so many cool things happening with this distance and virtual making right now. Let's dig into that. So that was one of the impetus for the project. And also I have always been saying, and Lisa can tell you, like for years, I'm like, library makerspaces need a group of their own because they're unique. They need to be able to talk to each other and they need to feel safe and to ask, you know, the simplest questions and that kind of thing. So that was the other part that we're trying to get launched. So we definitely grounded the project in understanding what we mean by what is a maker, what's making, and it's really about people. It's really about giving yourself the space and a space and time to be playful and curious, to try things out, to make mistakes, and that libraries are a way to make that accessible to anybody. And what do we mean by makerspace? Well, we have a very liberal, open view of what we mean by makerspace, because if you have a place where you can have the things at your fingertips to be creative or to learn a skill or to launch a project or collaborate, it doesn't have to be a fancy $1 million space. It could just be a multi-use room that is set up for a program and then taken down because tomorrow there's a book club in there. You know, a lot of these libraries, and maybe your library doesn't have a lot of extra space. So it could be this multi-use space. It could be a dedicated space. So some of our libraries converted a computer lab into a makerspace, which you're seeing on the top right there in Vallejo, California. It could be a program that pops up like a festival, like a maker fair, and is outdoors and is a periodic celebration. And that's an an opportunity for making with community and sharing. And makers love to share. And then it could be a virtual program or a MakerBox program where maybe one library develops a program kit with all the materials and maybe some direction on how to run the program, and then it's shared between all the branches. And then we've seen great examples of those as well. And it helps share those resources. So when we say your library, you know, has a maker program, it could be any of those, or maybe it's something we haven't even thought of and we would love to hear. This just shows you the scope of the project that we did. And here's a little group photo of people just like you, I think, hopefully. Just very nice people who are the librarians who worked very hard to really dig into this and develop wonderful programs. And in the process, this gives you a snapshot of how we think about what it means to develop and run a maker program. It involves listening to the people, this phase that we call the listening and discover phase. And then it involves prototyping a program, just trying something. Sometimes it's just very small, and thinking of different ways to bring programming into your library and allowing for experimentation, and then noticing how it went. And then taking those findings and implementing something maybe larger, maybe more substantial into your programming calendar, but always reflecting and refining, and then having marketing, having a way of growing it, having a way of bringing in funds and partners. And then that's kind of an iterative cycle for the programming. And there's always going to be moments where you have to go back to the community again and listen to what they're saying, find out who's there, what capacities are there. So our toolkit and our approach involves these steps. And this is just a snapshot of the tools that are available. So we wanted you to know about that toolkit, because then you'll know more about how we think about makerspaces in libraries. And also it's just a really cool and a very practical resource. And then it's about community, right? And we've been talking about community all along. So the Makerspace brings community in your library in this idea of sharing and being creative together, celebrating, learning, celebrating what's possible. We saw so much of that, of people teaching each other. It wasn't up to the librarian to teach them all, but people were always teaching each other what they knew, which was really exciting. At the same time, in this collective that we want to build, we think that we can do the same thing, where we're going to be here to host it and hold it up so it can get stabilized, but the library staff and people are going to be teaching each other, and we're just going to bring a platform forward for that. Lisa, do you want to talk about collectives?
Sure. So we just wanted to give a little moment. This is some of this information is in the info sheet as well. But just wanted to talk about what a collective is, because that's really the foundation of this project and this initiative. But we define it as a decentralized group of professionals with similar interests. So all of you are on here today have this interest of helping to bring library makerspaces and connect library makerspaces. And so we're going to work together to achieve a common objective. And so we're really looking for libraries and library staff to engage with us at various levels of this collective. So there are going to be people like what the application just came out, and we'll go through this a little more in depth, that are like our charter members, that are the founding group, that are really going to help us to get this off the ground. And then, you know, there's going to be everyone in between that might be contributing content. There might be people just lurking, right, and taking things and learning from the collective, and that's fine too. So it's going to be a group that has many ways to get engaged once we get it off the ground. So, and this is our slide on types of engagement. So here we go, all those ways to stay engaged. So this is just some ideas of ways that the collective might be serving a group of library makerspaces. There could be hey, here's something interesting, right? I just want to share something, this great blog, or here's this podcast, or I read this great article, or here's a webinar you might want to join, right? And this might be information that people are just coming on to get inspired and to join in on. Then there's going to be a part that's about giving feedback, right? That is actually crowdsourcing information. People might have a question they want to post, right? That like Pam was saying, you got a little question about something. I'm not sure what to do about X, and you want to get feedback and responses on that. You may be able to submit an activity idea and have people use it and say, oh, well, this worked or this didn't, right? Get some feedback on those types of resources. And then there's also just this idea of just we're working together. We're networking with other spaces across the country. We're learning from one another. We're mentoring one another. We might be able to find times that we can actually physically get together, whether that's regionally or nationally at times to physically meet, but that we're also connecting on social media and staying networked and engaged.
Yeah, and who knows? I mean, we could be applying for grants together. We could be collectively making purchases. I mean, the sky's the limit potentially. We could be helping each other present at conferences. All kinds of professional advancement may be possible through this. But we want to make sure that we are being very inclusive, and maybe the people who have not been central to the maker movement are the ones who are really building this. And that's kind of part of that new face of library makerspaces as well.
Yeah, so this is a little breakdown of our project and how we see it unfolding over the next 2 years.
I'm on a webinar, but what is it that you need?
Oops.
Oh.
I will see if I can just mute it back.
Okay. So we call this the first tier, which is our charter members, and that's what the application that went out for is for. And these folks, we're looking for 6 to 7. We left that a little open to see who we get, because we want to make sure that we have a lot of geographic diversity and diversity of type of library that we bring on. But we're looking for about 6 to 7 libraries who are really experienced with maker programming. So these charter members need to be folks that have been running some maker programming before the pandemic and managed to whether tweak it or do something, but maintain it during the pandemic, and are still doing maker programming now, because you're going to be the leaders that's helping to shape, bring on others, mentor others as they go along that process.
Mm-hmm.
So these folks were looking for diverse geographic representation and library type. As you probably noticed, we are open. This project does not have to be just for public libraries. So we're open to school libraries, to academic libraries, to tribal libraries. So various types of libraries are welcome to apply. We want to have a diversity of library type be represented. And part of as Pam was saying, we've got this commitment to kind of bring in others that may not have always been at the forefront of the maker movement, but we have a commitment to include at least 3 small or rural libraries in that. And we talked about, we have Kelly from the Association of Small and Rural Libraries on our advisory board for that reason, who's helping us to guide us in that way. But we want to make sure that we're still holding that commitment. So about half of the members of the collective will be from smaller rural libraries. The timeline, as Pam said, we just started in September 1st. This project runs for 2 years through August 31st, 2023. And we're in phase 1, where you saw that framework of listening and learning. We're in the listening and learning and doing research and just trying to get this collective off the ground, and hopefully bring on great libraries that are going to help us to build out the rest of this. So what we're going to talk about next is sort of what we envision that this collective could look like, but just wanted to leave the caveat that it's our intention that the charter members are going to come on board and say, yeah, this is great, or I have this other idea. I think you should unfold it like this, or maybe we should do this. We're really open to these ideas. You're really going to be on the team with us to help make the decisions about how the next steps unfold. But we wanted to lay out like one idea that we came up with how this collective could unfold over the 2 years. And the next part would be in bringing on, I forgot about this.
Do you want me to do this part next?
Let me say how it unfolds, and then I'll come back to this. Thanks, Pam.
Okay, sorry.
No,
I'm trying to go back. I'm trying.
Bye. If not, it's
Oops.
fine. No big deal.
Okay. Sorry.
We're always
I
learning
will,
here.
whoops. Okay, just avert your
I'll
eyes.
just keep
Okay, sorry. I don't know what's going on, but I will get back to our slides in a moment. Lisa, you talk
That's
about the
fine.
collective.
I'll just keep talking. So I'll just talk about the other ways the collective might engage, and then we'll get back to it. So the other kind of, we call them tiers of the collective. We thought there'd be a role for, we call them ambassadors. We're open to changing the names of any of these things, but ambassadors might be another role. People, we do have some funding in the grant for ambassadors as well. That would be people that would be, maybe writing blog posts, agreeing to mentor a certain number of libraries, helping to stay engaged on social media. They'll have some responsibilities as part of the collective in getting content out there, maybe sharing what they know on a professional development webinar or workshop, maybe helping to bring on a local, getting a local meetup to get together. But there'll be another kind of layer of folks that will be involved, and we do have some funding to help support them to keep the collective going. And then the final group we think about with the collective are community members. So again, there might be people that I don't have time to actually write a blog post, but I definitely want to attend that webinar, or I want to consume this content, or I want to hop on Slack and have a little conversation about something I'm struggling with, right? So there's going to be a whole lot of community members, we hope, as we continue to grow this, that will be on board and be gaining a lot of support and information through what the charter members and ambassadors are putting out, as well as things they might also want to be contributing to the group. So are we?
I'm going back to the slide deck, because we're going to talk about, if you apply to be a charter member, what are we asking you to do? And that is, I don't know the whole thing. I had to reload it, but no problem.
We're both having tech issues today. It's just that kind of day.
Modern. I think everybody can.
I was going to see if I can pull.
Okay, so charter members are our libraries. They're not like people, but they're libraries. So like kind of an institutional member of the collective, and the charter library will be receiving a stipend, and that is going to be what we're hoping to get is your help in creating systems and processes for how the collective will run. So like, who's a member? What does it mean to be a member? What do members do? Are there people that aren't members, and why not? All those kind of rules, values, all those shape that mission and vision, figuring out what communication channels are optimal for the people that will be part of this, and helping build these systems and get the word out about what we're doing. The charter members will also let us know, as the people running the grant, if there are important issues coming up in your area or in the field, like, hey, we really should do this, or this is an opportunity here, or just keep that communication with us so we can chase after those opportunities or address those issues. And then also you'll serve as a mentor for other libraries, an example, a resource for other libraries who are either just starting out, because we're going to be wanting to help people use our toolkit or our information to get something started, or maybe they're just trying to get their program back after the pandemic and it hasn't really gotten back yet. Whatever it means for those libraries, be a mentor and a resource, an example. Okay. Lisa was explaining the role of the ambassador. And so we had a couple graphics of that, how we can just build and expand across the country, and then also just general community members. And we have just a rough goal. It's like, okay, well, maybe by the end of 2 years, do we have 500 community members? Do we have more than that? I don't know. But just thinking about just growing, having a growth plan is what we'd like to do. And I'm wondering if maybe all of you have seen the information sheet that we have posted that has a lot of frequently asked questions about the project. It has just a general guidelines of all of it. You can get that. I have shortened a link, bit.ly/charter-application, and it kind of goes into detail about that. Maybe you could put it in the chat for people. Okay. And then the application itself is actually a Google form, and it, you know, if you get that charter application download, then you can just link to it from there as well. But this is the crazy looking link to the application itself. And by the way, we're going to share these slides, so you'll be able to get those from our website. You may be wondering, well, if I apply for this, what's the criteria? Lisa, do you want to go over some of those points?
Sure. So as we mentioned, we're looking for libraries that are experienced in maker programming for this part of the project. Later on, we definitely want to welcome libraries that are new or just starting their makerspace, but one of the selection criteria for a charter member is that you've been running some type of maker programming for around 3 years, meaning that you've been running something at least before the pandemic, kept some programming going during the pandemic, and are still doing something now. That programming could be totally different. It could have been a space that people came to, and then you moved to kits, and now you're doing everything virtual, right? I mean, it's okay if your programming model shifted over that time, but just that you have kept your maker programming going for around 3 years. We want that broad geographic distribution across the US. We're going to be looking for libraries that really serve diverse populations and are committed to justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion principles within their staff culture. The libraries should also represent a variety of makerspace programming models. Again, these charter members are going to be the models for everyone, and we want to make sure that we have some dedicated spaces. We've got some mobile carts. We've got people, who are doing things virtually, who might be done kits. So we're going to be looking for that kind of diversity of program models. And again, just want to reiterate, this is open to libraries of all types. So because we're going to be looking for including libraries of different types. So whether you're a school library, public library, academic, a tool lending library, tribal library, please apply. These 6 to 7 libraries are going to be leaders in the field, right? You're going to be leaders of this collective. We're going to feature you on our website. You're going to be featured on the Nation of Makers website. You're going to be a voice for this collective and for other library makerspaces across the country. And so we want to see that you've demonstrated some ability to connect not only within your library, maybe within your local community, but that you've also been engaged nationally with other maker professional groups or organizations. Maybe you've presented at some conferences. So we ask for your social media pages for your makerspace and things like that. And so, we'll be doing some digging online, looking at your social media feeds. We want to see if you've had, an online presence and how your makerspace has been able to get out there, get connected locally and nationally. So our timeline for the applications, they're due by November 15th. If you saw in the application, we do ask for a short little video, like 2 minutes or less, because we just wanted to get a sense of who you are outside of off the paper, right? That does not need to be a professionally produced video at all. You can take it on your phone and just send us the link. But we just want to hear from you a little bit about kind of why you want to be involved. And once we narrow it down, we're actually going to do interviews with the finalists. And we're planning on having those take place the weeks of November 29th through December 10th, because like Pam and I said, these folks are with us. You're basically with us from the ground floor, helping to shape this initiative for years and years to come. And we want to get to know you. You want to get to know us. We want to make sure this is all a really good fit both ways. So we will be having some little interviews, and our announcements will be made no later than December 20th.
Yeah.
We're going to hit the ground running in the new year.
Yeah, get going in the new year. And you may have applied and maybe you didn't get chosen, but that doesn't mean that you can't be. I mean, we want this to be a big network, so let's all get involved, and then but definitely apply, because we want to see you and get, now before we do Q&A, I thought I might show you a little bit of the application information. So let's see if I can.
And while you're doing that, I'm going to answer a question that's in the chat, Pam.
Oh,
if
yeah,
that's
yeah,
okay.
yeah.
So there's a question about what if maker-based programming you've been running has been at several different library systems, but you haven't, but you've kept that programming going. I think that's fine because we actually were very loose and even the application about, we realized that if it's like a school library, it might be your district that's applying for all of the libraries in your school, or it might be your library jurisdiction applying too. So I would say that's fine. Pam, do you agree with me? That
I think so. It's hard for us to make like strict rules about that. I think this is something new, and we wanted to be very open, but still have this group be representative of who we hope ends up being active in the collective, right? So we want to be able to have some breadth and diversity in the group. Who knows? Maybe everybody that applies is a public library, and then what can we do? Because we don't know who's going to apply. But I don't think so. We've been getting feedback that different types of libraries are interested, which is exciting and interesting. And in that case, I thought maybe I don't know that everybody here may be already familiar with Nation of Makers, Lisa. So I was thinking maybe I'll show you.
Yeah, that'd be great.
On the screen, this is the Nation of Makers website, and they've been around, I think they started in 2013 or so. And there was like a big White House launch thing, I think in 2014, that they were involved in a maker initiative. And so what does Nation of Makers do? They support all kinds of maker spaces. So the libraries part is just one part of that. But it's actually a really active part, which is really cool. And they have something called the Libraries Working Group, which is inclusive of of academic libraries and school libraries and and public libraries too. And we are going to be helping that Libraries Working Group build, and it may end up just being actually the collective. We're merging. We're like the Borg. We're like, and we're developing part of this website, Nation of Makers, which is nationofmakers.us is the URL. And we'll be housing a lot of information there too. In the meantime, we were using our Makers in the Library website, which is this one, where our toolkit lives. We're using this one, and our blogging that we're doing is actually on our Makers in the Library website. So if you see us sharing blog articles, it's going to be coming from here. But eventually, we're really going to try to be shifting the collective over to that Nation of Makers website. And they have, I don't know if any of you use Slack, but they have a communication platform, a channel on Slack. And you can actually join it now if you want. And in our information sheet that we put out, it shows how to join the Slack channel. So if you want to dialogue there, and they have regular meetups. There's a meetup today actually called Ask Me Anything, and they do it every couple of months. And then it's very much in line with what we're trying to accomplish here. Now, what I'm showing on the screen right now is the new Face of Library Makerspaces information sheet, which was that bit.ly link. And it kind of outlines some of the things that were in our slide deck that we were describing here. Talks about the project goals and who we are, where we came from with that previous project. What we're looking for with the chart, this is specific with the charter members, what we're looking for. And what's going to be asked of charter members. It does say here that charter member libraries will be expected to meet twice a month with the other charter member libraries, at least to get this off the ground. And then we want the library administrator, whether that's the director or the principal of the school or superintendent or whoever, to be available once a year for a meeting. We do a lot of evaluation. We like to hear feedback. And so we definitely want to hear from the administration of your library. Now, for some small libraries, the administrator may be the person who's involved, because that's the way it works. So that could be one person, one and the same. But there is going to be an expectation of collaboration starting in January. And then our evaluator will be doing some evaluation activities, but also it's a great support in helping you figure out how to evaluate things in your own library. He's a great resource, and we've definitely enjoyed working with Scott Berg, who's our evaluator. That slide that talked about selection criteria, that's all laid out here on this page of criteria. Again, the timeline is there, and then some links to some articles and information. And then here's what we mean by Makerspace, what we kind of showed in that slide with the pictures on it. What is a collective? And why we need 2 contacts. We've learned from experience that sometimes people leave their job, or they get promoted, or they get sick, or they have a baby, and we need somebody else to fill in, so it's not always just one person. Also, it's really a great thing to have 2 people involved in the project at your site, because you can talk to each other about things. It's just less lonely, let's put it that way. It's just to be able to bounce ideas off one another. And so we want at least 2 people. Again, that might have to be your administrator if you're very small, and a librarian or a library staff member. Certainly don't have to have a library degree, just somebody who's working in the Makerspace. How can I get involved? We have a Makers in the Library Facebook group, which we launched at the PLA meeting just before the pandemic. So we had a maker meetup at the PLA meeting in Nashville. We launched this Facebook group with people who came to that, and then everything shut down. So that it's starting to grow again because of I put the word out about this project, but you're welcome to join that. And then also the Slack channel link is there. And then we'll be doing a newsletter on a regular basis, probably a monthly or so. It won't be strict, but a basis, and you can sign up for our newsletter with that link. Now the application.
Can I pause you, Pam, and just answer a couple questions that came in the chat?
Yeah, definitely.
So Joy asked if there will be another application for the ambassadors later. So yes, absolutely. And that will be part of the charter members' responsibilities to help us come up with that and figure out how we're selecting ambassadors. But if you decide being a charter member just isn't the right thing for you, but you're interested in still being involved as an ambassador or other ways, just let us know. I don't know if we have our emails on the slides, but we can definitely put them in the chat. Just let us know, because then when that comes out, we'll make sure we send that to you and reach out to you as well. And then we also had a question about whether we're looking for libraries or institutions or individuals for these charter members. I know they said they think they got the answer, but I just want to make sure that's clear, because it is true. This charter member piece is a little different from other parts of the community, and that it is an institution. It is your library, institution, school that will be part of it. Obviously, people work at institutions, so it's going to be human beings there that are going to be part of this and posting and helping to be part of this. But we wanted to stay at that institution because, just like Pam said, people leave, people move around, and we want to maintain that geographic diversity, that diversity of library type, and all those kinds of things as we move forward. As we build the collective, it will be people, individuals that will be ambassadors, individual community members. But for this charter member piece, it is your institution and the people at that institution that are applying.
Yeah, exactly. Because I think it's part of the sustainability of the project as well, to just kind of have these anchors or hubs. And then we're going to launch from those areas and from the networks that these libraries have established, or maybe are just establishing. And that I think that's going to add to the stability and the reach, I think. So we do need to know 2 contacts and a director or administrator, but that director administrator could be the secondary contact. And then we're going to just be asking some general demographic kind of questions or library type questions, which are just like kind of check boxes. And maybe your library is a system. So if you're a county library system, maybe what applies, or it could be a branch. We're open to the choices. So we want to know, is your system applying, or is it just your branch? And then your system may have both urban and rural in it. I do understand that, or suburban and rural. So just tell us as much as you can about what your library characteristics are. And then I know all of you do reporting on your library statistics. So we're asking about like number of patrons or number of students or the population, and you can just pull those from your generalized reports, but be sure to like give us a little context, because not everybody does their reporting the same way. So is it per year? Is it per month? Is it like, how are you counting? That would be helpful. And then there's a little section of just describing your maker program to us. Tell us a little bit about it. You'll have a way to just narrative answers on those. You don't have to write a book, but just like describe it for us. And if you're engaged with any external organizations or partners in the community, as a science museum or maybe a nonprofit or the Rotary Club, I don't know, whatever it is. Do you have any of those kind of relationships? And then why you think your library is a good candidate to be a charter member of the collective. And so we just want to know, like, why are you interested and why are you excited and what are you worried about? Go ahead and add those and give us that little video clip. It's just, hopefully it's not too scary. It shouldn't be scary. It should be very simple to give us a little video clip, just introducing yourself and telling us why you want to be part of this. And then we do need, because this is a library commitment, we do need a letter of support from the library director or administrator, somebody in charge who can say, yes, we're committing to this. There is a financial arrangement that's going to be coming forward and expectations. So you will be getting $6,000 or $7,000 for this to help offset the cost of your work on the project. So we do want to make sure that we have the approval of the person in charge. And then lastly, we have little descriptions about the folks involved in the project. So this is all on that PDF, which you can download. Hopefully you're able to access that. If not, let us know. So I'm going to stop sharing, Lisa.
We had a couple more questions. We do. So one is, it was a great question for the number of patrons, users, students you serve. Is it a library question or a Makerspace program question? We wrote it as a library question, thinking that people might not always know specifically for their Makerspace, but we can make sure that's clarified in that question. And I would say if you know it for your Makerspace too, the more information is better. Please let us know. But we just thought some people might not be tracking that. That might be a little harder to find. So the question was intended for your library, but if you know it for your Makerspace too, please let us know. And then Joy asked about the charter members. What's the time commitment per month? That's a great question. I don't know if we can give you an exact answer, but it will, this is a decent commitment, I guess I'll say, in that, we're going to be meeting twice a month as a team. We're going to leave and think of it like, being on a board, right? For an institution or something that you're helping to start, right? So after we meet, there's going to be work to be done on, okay, we worked on the mission and values today as a whole, but there'll probably be little subgroups. Okay, we've got the subgroup of 2 or 3 people that are going off and working on that, and this subgroup of 2 or 3 people that are making sure they're posting on Facebook and helping out the Slack channel. So there'll be those regular meetings, and then there's going to be sort of work to be done in between the meetings too. Pam, I don't know if you have a better, more concrete
I would think that the 2 meetings a month, at least at the very beginning of the project, are going to be an hour each. And then there'll probably be follow-up from each meeting that may be 6 hours of work or 4 hours, a half day of work each. So it may be like 10 to 12 hours a month, I'm guessing, but that's probably not a big block of time. It's probably something that you weave into your day. You may have to talk to somebody or write a letter or make a phone call or create a social media post or whatever. So it's not those like, oh, like I have to take this week off to do this thing. I doubt that is going to be what it is. But I think the meeting times are going to be important because it's going to be collaborative, and then follow up, and then some of those things. It's a little bit hard to quantify, but that's my expectation. And I see there's a question on costs. I don't know that there's any costs involved at all, unless you're mailing stuff, but we're not going to tell you to do that.
The stipend's intended to be for the time, because this is a almost 2-year commitment for 10-ish hours a month, right? And doing things, and that's a decent commitment, right? To ask for folks and to be being at these meetings regularly and having, follow-up things to do and be part of. So we're not going to ask you to buy anything or do anything for your makerspace. I mean, the money is intended just to offset your time commitment.
Yeah. And I think, I feel like there's potential there that we could bring in more dollars, actually. If we can make this successful and we can build something with lots of opportunity behind it, then we'll apply for more grants, and, we can maybe have a, maker in residence. I don't even know. At each of the charter libraries. I mean, like, sky's the limit. We have our imagination, and our interest is, we can just go all sorts of directions with it. I feel like there's potential there, especially with Nation of Makers as a partner, as the Association of Rural and Small Libraries as a partner, and working together on these things. And then with this amazing advisory board that we've got, I feel like, there's all kinds of potential there. So we were limited in we applied for the maximum amount that we could from IMLS without having to match the money, because Lisa and I don't have $500,000 to put toward it. We just have an idea. We're like just us. And so, but all along we thought this has got potential to bring in more dollars so we can build this even more. So that's the way we're thinking about it.
And there was another question about the stipend. The stipend goes to your institution. Mm-hmm. So the intention is that the stipend goes to your organization, and then they can use that to pay you. We'd have to dig into all of the rules about how money can be spent, and we have to get Paula from Khalifa on here. But I would think you could spend it on some other things for your makerspace, but the intention is it's going to your institution to help offset the cost of you being part of this project.
And there is a little stipend when we get to the ambassador level. It's not as much, but there is something similar then. And I think we would have to pay it to the library, but then the library can choose. Like, I used to be involved in teacher education, and we had student teachers and we had mentors. We had to pay it to the school, and then the schools all handled it differently. So that's almost a negotiation on your part with your library administration, if they're going to give you that money directly, or if they're going to use it as replacement cost to bring in other staff when you're not available,
Oh yeah, so we see it's against the law in some places there. Yeah, every organization runs it differently.
Yeah. So we're not going to involve in that mess.
And they ask for our emails, which is fine. I just put mine in there.
We also have this, which we check.
Oh yes.
Yeah.
It's new, so I forgot about it.
I'm curious, at this point, continue to ask questions, but do any of you feel like this might, this is not a commitment, but does this sound like it might be something that your library would be interested in?
Seeing lots of interest, and we had a few more questions pop up too.
Oh yeah. We have somebody just joining just right now. Okay. Have any of you ever worked on a campaign, like a political campaign or a community organizing campaign? This is what this reminds me of. in a campaign, you have a lot of education involved. Like, what is the issue at hand? What are library makerspaces? How do you make a case for library makerspaces? What's involved in library makerspaces? How can we support library makerspaces? And in fact, Nation of Makers has a whole advocacy program on how to advocate for makerspaces, how to make the case. So as you're a charter library, you're going to have to know how to speak, and maybe we'll learn it together, how to speak about library makerspaces and explain the value of them, why they're important, why they're unique and different from other kinds of makerspaces, and why they should be a core program in your library. That's what I'm always advocating for. Oh, this is a core program. It's not like a fancy extra shiny thing. It's actually a core to our mission, that people have tools or be able to build knowledge, learn, collaborate, be a community gathering opportunity. And so what will members be doing? They're going to be launching that campaign to show, to advocate, and to mentor others to build these kind of programs in their libraries. So it's probably, if you're like a very big introvert, it might not be the role for you. You have to be able to speak, but we can help you coax that out of you if you need it.
There was another question about ambassador timeline.
Yeah.
It's a little squishy because actually we want our charter members to help us to come up with that timeline and to help recruit those. I would say next summer at the earliest. So summer of 2022 would be the earliest, probably. We're going to need 6 months to get this group together and cohesive and off the ground and figure out our mission and values and get this campaign going, as Pam said, right? So I would say next summer at the earliest.
The toolkit has instructions on how to develop your elevator speech in case you need to. Chris Dorman, I see what you said there. We're good at practicing those to know how to talk about. We think that librarians should talk in the grocery store, in the hardware store, in the book club about their makerspace. So we like slide it in there all the time and get the word out about your maker program. Information at the end.
That's for our contact info again.
Oh, okay.
info@makersinthelibrary.org, right?
And Gail, I see Gail Sorensen on here. Gail was an employee of one of the libraries that was in our original project, and they actually looped into their vocational workforce development program with their project. So that was really awesome. I know, it's ironic. I used to have I used to be a very loud librarian, by the way, but my school had 900 7th and 8th graders, so that was just loud in general. Yeah, that time we were hammering nails to make in wood to make the string art, and like, whoa, the English teacher was so angry. Yeah. Anyway, more questions. I'm excited to see you all here. I'm really happy that you joined us. Also, if you know of others who may be interested, send them to the next info session. I'm going to go ahead and post this recording. We'll share it in the Makers in the Library Facebook group and other places. And we hope to get this launched. And we need to have something there to have people want to be part of it, right? So feel free to share resources. One thing that we'll be able to do with this collective is curate resources that were developed during the pandemic. I'm kind of excited about that, coming up with playlists of all these different cool programs that were recorded and delivered virtually, other kinds of recipes for kits that came up, all kinds of ideas that were developed during the pandemic. We're also going to be doing a big survey as part of this project to gather as much information about what happened during the pandemic. So that's another part of the project. Yeah. And we've reached the top of our hour. I'm really excited to get to know all of you. I hope we stay connected and
Yes. Thank you so much. Thanks
thank you for
everyone for
taking time
joining.
out of your busy day to be here with us.
And please reach out with any other questions. Would rather you reach out than kind of doubt what you're putting in the application or something. So just please ask a question at any point in time. We're happy to answer it. And thank you all for joining.
Adios, amigos.